Bash! Yo, it's me, DJ Jackum. How's everyone doing? First video on the Patreon ever. How exciting. Production quality is a bit low right now, but hopefully we'll do something about that in the near future. Just recently moved into this house with my partner, and the studio is it's looking a bit mad right now, not gonna lie. The bedroom or the room that the studio the room that the studio is in used to be like a kid's bedroom. So like the walls are kind of decorated in it's like a repeat print dinosaur kind of vibe. There's like I don't know, the words is like a stegosaurus. The one with a big hump on its back. Yeah, it's a bit mad. But eventually we'll get the studio done up all nice. Maybe even get a face cam going or something like that, which will be fun, as if I don't have to be in a pink balaclava enough at the shows, but I can do these videos wearing them. Anyway, fuck all that. We are doing a breakdown of Backpack, which is super exciting, right? So yeah, I'm just going to go through the track. Like I say, it's my first video on Patreon. I might put this one out for free, maybe, to like entice people in, or I might not. I've not decided yet. Maybe I'll bang it in the Discord actually first for free. Yeah, let's do that. Let's put it in the Discord for free and show people kind of what the vibe's going to be going forward. If you're not in the Discord, jump in. I'll have a link to that somewhere. And yeah, without further ado, we'll crack on. So I guess I'll just play the vibe of the track, so that anyone that hasn't heard it can kind of hear what we're working with.
Big shot running on the backpack.
So yeah, super exciting. That's the vibe that we're on. Yeah, I like this track actually. It's pretty fucking. I really like the bass in it. The bass is like does some mad shit. It's like we'll get onto the bass anyway. But I like the bass because it kind of has this quality about it where it almost sounds like it's kind of tearing itself apart. It's super layery. There's some weird artifacts going on in there. It's cool. But probably the most logical place to start would be the drums, right? Let's start with the drums. Yeah, let's start with the fucking drums. So, kick, super simple, right? The kick, there's literally nothing really going on the kick. This is the kick. The kick is kicking. We're clipping it slightly. Well, we're clicking it 6 dB actually, so we're clipping it quite a lot. For anyone that doesn't know why we would use a clipper, if we just take a look at the peak volume of the kick beforehand, we're hitting it -1. After the clipping, we are hitting at 0, but basically what we're doing is we're increasing the overall volume of the kick while leaving the peak volume. The peak volume does increase, but it doesn't increase that much. It only decreases basically 1 dB, and we've had a huge volume boost. So that's why it's clipping. And it's also, I feel like we're getting. There's two kind of ways you would use a clipper, right? There's like the creative aspect of using a clipper, so it's gonna make the sound like saturated, distorted, crunchier, warmer, so to speak. And then the other reason you would use one is for kind of mixing purposes to increase loudness. And we're doing a bit of both here. It's pretty leery after the clipping. Is it clipped too much? Maybe, probably. One thing that you'll kind of realise about me the more of these videos that I do is that although I kind of respect a lot of we want a good mix down, of course, and stuff like that, and we want it to sound clean, but my whole vibe is that I can't be asked to mix things well. Or maybe it's not even that I can't be asked, maybe I actually can't. And some people would say that my mix downs are alright actually, but basically what I'm trying to say is that I focus way more on just, does the tune sound good? If there's some glaring issues like, the tune is muddy as fuck, I'll obviously try and address that, but what I'm trying to say is that, I don't place too much emphasis on mix downs. I'm not too bothered about is everything technically perfect and blah blah blah. Like the vibe is more important, I would say. And that's why you can see that there's no EQs on here or nothing. Like there's literally a clipper to increase the loudness, and that's it. So that's simple. We can move on. What's on the rim? So there's a few bits on the rim, so we'll kind of go through all of this. But the first thing I want to comment on is the fact that it is a rim, right? I hear a lot of people make a garage nowadays, and a lot of people I think maybe struggle with garage snares, so to speak. Basically, I don't know why, but for some reason I find it really difficult to kind of use like snares in my tunes. Like I can never find snares that hit right, so I tend to be kind of looking a lot more at percussions and rim shots basically for my main snare. They just hit a bit higher up in the spectrum. If you look at this on an EQ, we're sort of peaking at about 1K, and I think that has a lot to do with kind of the sound of like, I guess, modern, more aggressive two-step garage, especially, is the fact that you've got these, because your main snare / rim shot or whatever is hitting kind of higher up. We can see we've got a little peak there at maybe 400-ish hertz, and then one higher up at maybe 1K. Because it hits higher up, you've got a lot more space down here in your low mids, which you can generally tend to fill up with nice kind of low bass harmonics. So anyway, yeah, this will have been made. Unfortunately, it's a resample list now, but I can tell you exactly how it would have been made. I would have found a Rimshot, or not even necessarily a Rimshot, but something more of a percussion sound, that kind of with a fundamental that hits higher up, that sort of like kind of sound, and then I'll just layer that like with the high end of a clap, maybe the tonality of like a fucking conga or whatever, and I'll just kept layering until I found something that sounds nice. Let's have a look at what's going on in processing. Nothing crazy, so I am boosting slightly those two fundamentals that we talked about, so one at 400 and another at 899 specifically. The 1 hertz makes a huge difference. We're clipping it just like we have done with the kick, just to get that bit of loudness. Then we've got another EQ. Why I couldn't have done this with just this EQ, I do not know, but we've got high pass, so cutting out a lot of the lows, and just a gentle shelve taking out some of the highs. At the time I must have thought that there was just 2.3 dB too much high end, so I've decided to remove that. Then we've got a really kind of tight room reverb. Again, with like, when we're thinking two-step garage drums, right, we're thinking about tight, kind of snappy sounds, and so like reverb, it's quite rare actually that I even put reverb on my drums, but when I do, it's very tight, and I've got that in like an effects rack, rather than just like having just a plugin on there and adjusting the mix, or maybe just having a low mix. I just prefer to have the reverb on 100% wet, and then one version of it 100% dry. So it's in a chain. One of the chains is dry, and one of the chains is just the reverb. And I just like that. It gives me more control. I can turn up or down the level of the kind of volume of the reverb, and I can EQ it, add effects to it, do whatever. So that's super exciting. And then, so this basically operates kind of like it's on a send, right? but I just find fucking sends annoying. Like I just don't. I mean, I use them for some stuff, but for stuff basically for individual sounds, I'll just load it up in an effects rack like that. And then finally, the last thing is texture. So we can hear that is basically that is essentially just adding some noise onto the top, some like static noise. So if we listen to just the dry signal, that is what it's adding basically. So it's just adding a bit of fizz to the top end. So yeah, super exciting. Let's take a look now at the kind of tops. We've got a lot of shit going on in the tops. If we just solo them. Let's start from here so you can kind of get a feeling with the metronome. So we've got these kind of shuffly hi-hats going on, which are basically made up from this kind of 16th note, so a tiny little hi-hat. And super important to note is that there is a swing being used on this. It's not loaded up in the groove over here because I've committed it. But if we look up at this swing track, I've committed it there as well. So basically, this swing track, you'll see this all over my productions, and it's basically because I don't do it I do still do this, but essentially I used to basically work in audio all the time. He says all the time, and he's got a hi-hat and a sampler here. But the reason I have this swing track is so that anything that I swing in audio, I can kind of manually line up basically with this swing at the top. Because if you've ever tried throwing a load of hi-hats and getting or anything percussive, and basically if you've ever tried applying swing to an audio loop in Ableton, you'll know that it sounds absolutely dog shit. Ableton just does a terrible job of it. So this is why I have this swing track, basically to line things up. So we've got a 16th note kind of thing going on. So it's not super swung, but it is swung. There's some volume automation velocity, not automation, but variances going on there. We've got this other hi-hat, just accenting certain hits, and then we've got this other hat, kind of a low crunchy hat, and that's making up most of the kind of drum groove. So I like to do this a lot, lots of different hi-hats, kind of get a groove going. I often find, because a lot of the time the hi-hats is the first thing I'll do, because a kick and a snare or a kick and a rim, like whatever, do you know what I mean? It's not too exciting. Garage, obviously, it's all about the funk, innit? It's all about the swing of the hi-hats, so or the swing of the tune. So by kind of nailing your hi-hats first, they can basically inform the rest of your decisions. So yeah, just a little tidbit, little note there. Let's listen to them all again, because we've got some interesting kind of shit going down here. We've got like a chopped up break, and then we've got some little bits of Foley like this kind of ting, which I'm sending to a reverb to do a big kind of splashy thing. What have we got that's happening over here? We've got some like variation. So we've got the first 16 basically here, right? And then later on we're introducing kind of some interesting variation in the drums basically. We've got like a ride. It's a crash, but it's playing the part of a ride. And I've banged that in a sampler, and it's basically, I'm looping just the tail portion. Just to add a bit of fizz, kind of top end sheen. And then I've also got, what is this? Some percussion. Really subtle in the background, but, you know, might not be immediately kind of obvious to the listener, but kind of subconsciously, there's more high-end stuff going on. So it's slightly more exciting for this second kind of 16 bar or whatever. Let's look at, you know, I'm not going to go too detailed into what's going on each of these tracks, because it's all pretty boring, you know, low cut to get rid of any fucking low end that's going on. Maybe some reverbs here and there. Nothing super exciting. This track's got literally nothing on it. So let's look at what's going on in the loop. What's this filter down thing first? Let's see if this is interesting. Okay, yeah, so that's a resample of the entire drums, resampled down to one track with just camel fat, which is an old kind of VST. I don't even think they make it anymore, but you can still get it if you look hard enough. I just really like the bandpass on it. It's just nice. So that's just filtering it down for just a kind of fill section here. So let's look at the group, the tops group. Is there anything interesting happening? That's so mad. So this auto filter, I can't believe it looks like I've just left a filter on. You see, this is what I'm talking about, guys, right? When I say, like, I kind of throw caution to the wind with mixing and stuff a lot. So I've left a auto filter just on the whole drums, doing nothing. So this will have been made to make this little filter down thing here. And then I've obviously thought I'll print that to audio and then delete it. And then just completely forgotten to delete it. Which, like, I know the filter is at max cutoff, but it will still be doing some shit up there in the top end. Like, that should not be on. But obviously, I've forgotten that that's on and released the tune. Fuck it doesn't really matter. But, yeah, just interesting. Like, I obviously didn't care at the time. It wasn't sticking out to me. We've got this bus tonal balance thing going on. I don't tend to do this too much anymore. At the time I was trying to basically balance my kind of mix downs against pink noise from the looks of it. Let's listen to the before and after of the tops. So without it. Just added a bit of brightness, kind of high shelf there, and then a big boost at 800 hertz. Weird, to be honest. I don't know. Would I have done that now? Probably not. So that's super helpful for you guys, isn't it? And then I've done it again. No, wait, what the fuck? So, what I have actually done is, on this EQ here, I've boosted with a pretty wide band massively all this kind of, 800 hertz-ish region, plus or minus whatever's there, and then I've boosted the highs, and then I've then removed 2 dB of a similar kind of frequency there. There's no science behind this, guys. I've obviously felt like it needed even more top end. These will have just been tweaks I've made at the time, just trying to get it to sound vibey, But yeah. That's the tops. What time are we on? 18 minutes. Alright, we're doing... Apologies if I'm fucking moaning on about shit, guys. People are out there just going, just show us the bass, you fucking dick. Fine, I will. Let's move on to the bass, because that's the kind of most exciting bit. So all the bass is in a big group. It looks like some of the fills, for example, have been kind of printed to audio. But I can tell you now that they will all have just been copies, basically duplicates of the main bass with the settings kind of tweaked. That's generally how I like to do variation of my basses, and I think a lot of producers do a similar thing. You'll make your main bass, let's say, and then to get little fill basses and kind of stuff like that, we'll kind of just duplicate the patch and make some tweaks until we find something that sounds good. But let's kind of just discuss this main bass. So the whole riff. So we've got like a call and response type thing going on, right? We've got this call bass here, which is the big whomper. We then go into this 808 down here, and then we go into a little, the second call bass, you could say. So if this is call, this is response, this is call again. And then no bass here, right? No bass is just as good as having bass, guys, right? We don't need to have bass happening all the time in our track. In fact, the more sparse you can be with it, the kind of better. The longer in the tooth I've been getting into this like production thing, the more I'm realising, space is important, and minimalism is kind of important. And I'm not talking about just making tracks like minimal D&B. I don't mean that. Why would anyone think I meant that anyway? But what I do mean is like the least amount of shit, like a least amount of tracks you can get away with is normally the best amount of tracks. So yeah, this silence here, all that serves to do, it's not completely silent in the track. We've got that vocal chop happening, but because we've got this big kind of section here with no bass, then when the bass then comes back in, it's all the more impactful. Right, so that's just a quick note on kind of the arrangement of the bass there. Sub is... This is super rare for me. I don't do this anymore. I've got like I've drawn in basically the first 4 harmonics on Ableton in operator. So if I took all of them out, it's just all that's doing is adding kind of upper harmonics in the bass, in the sub, specifically the sub, just to help it kind of cut through a bit more. I guess on speakers and systems that are lacking a bit, and so that's just going to help it kind of cut through on shittier headphones, and it just gives your sub a bit more presence. We've got a clipper on it. The clipper is not doing anything. I've got our bass on here, which is like a bass compressor. I mean, that is doing a lot for kind of chunkiness. I don't use this a lot. I mean, I fucking never use this. I can't believe it's even on this track. But I was obviously at the time just trying shit out to give the bass a bit more oomph. Could I just probably turn the bass up? Yes, I think so. But we used our bass in this occasion. And then fuse compressor. I mean, this is just a preset that I've just tried out. Basses. Again, don't do this nowadays, but interestingly enough, if we just let's take a listen. So what we're peaking at before, -12. So let's out of interest put a utility to kind of knock this track back down to like -12 dB ish. Oops. Why is it not letting me put a fucking utility on it? Hello? Bear with. There we go. So -12 we want this to be. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to do basically a volume match test to see what this has actually done. It just emphasises the low end, I think. It's like it skews it to kind of ducks those harmonics down a bit. Again, guys, I mean, a lot of these decisions. Oh, look at that. My mouse has disappeared. What a fucking joke. Guys, what do I do? Okay, I need to stop this and figure it out. Alright guys, we're back and my mouse is back. So, that's good. Just while the project's loading, what I was saying is basically, I tried a few plugins on the sub. At the time I thought they were good, so I just rolled with it, So hopefully when this loads back, we'll get into the mid bass. Because sub bass is pretty, to be honest with you guys, like, sub bass is, it's not the fucking be all and end all. I remember there was years in kind of my journey with production where I was like obsessed with sub, because I thought that the sub was what made your bass fat, and sound massive, but it's not. It's the low mids. Sub is just there basically just to shape people's fucking chest through a rig. It's not super important. If all your sub is made up of it is just a sine wave, as long as you've got the low mids there, which is basically these kind of frequencies here, then you're sweet. So that's the sub. Let's look at the kind of main bass. Let's unfreeze it. We can see. Look at that. Anyway, what I'm going to do is, wow, there's a lot of plugins on this. I'm going to turn all of them off, and we're just going to listen to the original patch. A lot of my kind of sound comes from post-processing, guys, rather than synth work. So let's take a listen with all the effects off. So pretty simple sound. It's literally a vital wavetable. These aren't even doing it, like this LFO isn't even doing anything at all. Because you can see it's starting right at the top. There's no effects, nothing on it. That is actually mad. That is mad, isn't it? Okay, yeah, so super basic. Let's go one by one and kind of listen through what everything is doing. Turn all these off. Bash. So it's worth mentioning that kind of volume movement you can hear is coming from the sidechain, right? I use duck for my sidechain, so that's what's creating the blah blah blah. That's what's creating it. So we've got a low E with a pitch bend on it. And what's the first thing we did? So the first thing we did was absolutely rag 250 hertz and 825. Now, this might not, I know this is first in the chain, however, I might have put this in. This might have been added later on, because basically what I like to do a lot of the time to get more interesting results out of distortions is push frequencies into the distortion. So obviously 15 dB at these 2 points, what I've probably done is just put a distortion on, and then just before the distortion started ragging big peaks into the distortion, basically just to listen, just to see how it sounds, because normally it yields pretty interesting results. What comes before the distortion is way more important than the settings on your distortion. So that's kind of giving it that almost Formanty kind of quality. Wow. We then what the fuck? So then basically what we've done is put a bandpass filter on the whole sound, which is pretty interesting to say the least. You know, we've bandpassed just the low frequencies. I'm just dumbfounded, guys, by the fact that I actually did this. We'll see. We will see whether this adds anything to the sound when we put all the chain on. Because what I've basically done is boost the frequencies and then filtered those frequencies out that I've boosted. So we'll see if it makes a difference. Maybe it does. So we filtered it and then put a little bit of reverb on. So this is doing a few things, right? Putting reverb before distortion is very interesting a lot of the times, I find. You get very interesting results out of the distortion. So it's doing that, and it's also adding width, probably a bit too much width. Nowadays I turn the stereo down when I'm kind of doing this sort of thing, just because when you collapse it down to mono, Ableton stereo things in its plugins kind of doesn't collapse down very well, sounds a bit dog shit. But yeah, so that reverb version is then running into another filter with resonance at kind of 268. So that to be fair is like a double boost of basically this frequency. So we're boosting it down there, and we're also boosting it here. So resonance, basically I'm trying to create resonance here, and this will all feed into basically distortions later down the line, because resonance into distortion normally for me equals like cool shit. So then we've got an EQ. Okay, so that is boosting 114 hertz. That is basically boosting that second harmonic Now we're getting distortion there, but I believe that's just because probably one of the clippers somewhere is triggering because we boost the frequencies so much. So then all of this is running into a thermal. So now we can see we start to get kind of the agginess coming out the bass. And when I hit pause, you hear those weird kind of tails that are happening afterwards. That's coming from the reverb. So let's turn this first EQ off, see if it does all. So it actually does do a lot. It does a lot. So that's super interesting, right? Because what we did is we pushed it with the filter, then seemingly filtered those frequencies out twice, and then distorted it, but it still has a massive effect on the sound. So thermal, this is a wicked plugin. It's used for kind of like distorted glitches, but also I just think its distortion section sounds peng, so I use it all the time. So then we have got another EQ. So what I've done here is I've just picked out a single kind of harmonic, that harmonic there, and again boosted the life out of it. We'll come back to this auto filter, but I will have boosted that basically into this fuse compressor. So what the fuse compressor does, it's essentially an OTT, but it has like a clipped, it has the option to clip the output, you know, with like a soft clipper or a hard clipper, I believe. No, it's just soft clipping. So this is just helpful for like ragging frequencies into it and then clipping it even further, like more distortion, and it'll kind of control the sound a bit more. So we've got two of those. And also you can kind of do some gentle kind of EQ manipulation, you know. You can change the volume of each of the bands. So there's two of them, both with just slightly different settings, emphasizing different frequencies, but both have got the clipper engaged on the output. A K clip on the output as well. That's probably doing nothing. Yeah, that is literally doing nothing. And then we've got this auto filter. So that's just like basically notching out some frequencies. So for example, like if we kind of put some automation in that, see it's doing super interesting shit. It's like carving frequencies out of the mids, essentially mids and low mids, which just gives different flavours. So altogether, that's what we've got. We've got basically just this big, mad, distorted mess. And then when you play that with the sub, you've got some nice power there, basically. So that's the backpack main bass right there. Essentially, if there's any lessons for any of you to take away, it would be that like if when you distort sounds they sound boring, just try pushing some different frequencies in. I mean, even just this, like if I push a different frequency in here, it completely changes the tonality of the bass. You know, and it's sick because there's about fucking 10, you know, 10 possible different like variations you could have just by selecting different harmonics. Yeah. So lit. So this 808, it's literally just, let's turn off all the processing, but I'm sure, I mean, this is just like an 808 that I really like the sound of. Ooh. Yeah, so it's just an 808, and I'm using the FM section in sampler to basically modulate it, frequency modulate it with noise, which is a pretty classic technique, like, just gives that sizzle, you know. And what that then means is that when we kind of distort it, yeah, sorry, I got lost then. When we distort it, basically means that the distortion is going to have a bit more interesting shit to play with, you know, because the high end will trigger the distortion in conjunction. Basically, the low end and the high end will kind of crunch together inside the distortion. So that's fucking mint. I can't show you how this was made, but pretty certain that, like I said before, it's just going to be a version of the main bass, maybe just filtered and that, you know, filter it and that, mate. Just filter it. So there's another version over here, but I'm not going to show you that, guys. I'm not going to show you it because honestly, I reckon I just chose different frequencies to push. You can already see like the differences in EQ. It'll be the exact same patch, probably, with just slight differences on the EQs. So yeah. Is there anything else in here that you need to see? That's just a resample. Pretty boring. What's this shit here? Yeah, so these are just reverb swells. Ooh, that is a cool sound, but unfortunately I can't show you how I made that one because I've consolidated it. But these reverb swells, these are super easy to make. You just take your sound, so like that for example, resample it down, reverse it, put a big reverb on it, resample that again, and then reverse the reverb, and then they're just interesting for kind of, you know, without that. They're just useful for filling up space in the mix that you don't want necessarily to put bass in. So that's the bass. I think that general concept, I know guys, I'm not going into detail of every single minute sound and minutia of every sound, but you know, the general kind of thing of driving shit into, driving frequencies into distortion, you know, that is the main lesson of this tune. And maybe my whole career so far. What's next? Oh, let's just look at, there's some stuff on the group, which we should cover. Duck, sidechaining, nice and interesting and boring. Sidechain is important. Don't use Ableton's compressor anymore. It's dog shit. Just use Duck or Shaper Box or something like that. Way more precise. And there's even more precise methods now, like ring mod sidechain, which I haven't quite gotten into yet, but maybe I will and I'll do a video on it. We'll see. An EQ. Probably wouldn't do this nowadays. But an EQ, and then a chorus. Dry, wet, for width. Obviously just felt like, it is gnarly that bass, isn't it, to be fair. Give myself a pat on the back, it is a pretty fucking gully bass. So what I've done is I've basically got this TAL Chorus LX, free chorus, quite like it. I've put an EQ beforehand, to kind of isolate just the high frequencies, because I just wanted, in this tune, I just wanted the very highs to be kind of chorusy. So then I put a chorus on afterwards, so I like it. It gives a bit of fucking spreading in the tops, it's nice. Texture layer. So this is something I do on basically every tune. Just a bit of texture in the top end. It's like Foley basically. You know, that's like maybe the sound of rain, high passed, and that below it is some kind of interesting shells being rattled around with it off. Pretty dry. I like doing this kind of thing, guys. I like to just fill out a bit of the top end in the track with some interesting texture. It makes it sound less digital and less dry and fucking boring. So yeah, I do that kind of shit all the time. This group here, looks like it's what contains all of this, the kind of little effects and stuff like that. So if you look at the effects group, you know, a downer, an upper, super interesting stuff. Another downer. You know, I'm not going to show you all this, guys. It's just samples. I don't really make my own because there's just that many good samples of that kind of thing out there, and it's boring to make. Clash. So this is all basically, I'm guessing, all the different kind of vocal samples. So
Big shot running on the block park.
this is just like a, I'm guessing it's from Splice.
Big shot running on the block park.
There's quite a lot going on, kind of processing wise. If we like turn all this off, the K clip won't be doing anything, guys. It's just on there.
Big shot running on the block park. Big shot.
Pretty good sample to begin with, to be fair.
Big shot running on the.
Little bit of reverb, and then it's going into a vocoder, and I'm guessing this is just on noise mode.
Big shot running on the block park.
I like doing this. If you just listen to just the, if you listen to just the wet,
Big shot running on the block park.
it's kind of like this evil like
Big shot running on the block park.
noisy version. So I've just played around with the formant on noise mode, and then obviously just mix that in with a bit of dry wet.
Big shot running on.
Towel chorus again. This time just low dry wet-ish, lowish dry wet.
Big shot running on the block park.
Then we're going into Radiator, which is a Sound Toys thing.
Big shot running on the block park.
Tiny bit of saturation. That's what all that's doing. Fuse compressor.
Big shot running on the block park.
That's doing a fair bit.
Big shot running on the block park.
Again, guys, this is just like a nicer sounding OTT. Is how I would describe it. And then a bit of EQ. And then so basically, the last kind of word is been sent to like a big delay. And this was just basically, this is a crutch, right? This is a crutch because I can't write good proper songs with nice, you know. Using something like this means that we can kind of use just a phrase as basically the hook of your track, like the main hook, the main refrain or whatever, and then you can just butter it up with loads of delay. You know, I guess it's interesting because it's just simple, and it's an interesting point to make because not every tune we make has to be this big, you know, beautifully crafted. Amazing, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Basically, some tunes can be simple. Some tunes can just have a sick vocal sample and some big bass, and it's for the rave, it's for the club, and it's all right, you know. And that's what this track is really. You know, it's not a ballad, you know. Guy saying big up. Again, this is kind of used creatively as like a way to kind of add interest without adding bass in. So this section, no bass. We've got this kind of rhythmic big up thing going on. What else have we got in here? A reverse sample. A little dub beep thing. Some Foley.
Big shot running on the block park.
You know, this, when people often say, you know, in the one-to-ones that they feel like the tracks feel too empty or something like that. That general kind of vibe that they want to fill the tracks up with stuff. You know, I often take a bit of time once I've got the main kind of loop idea figured out. Do you just go in and add some interesting sounds, like I call them spice sometimes, or seasoning or whatever, but just interesting kind of sounds and effects and vocal shouts and stuff like that, just to kind of keep things rolling, right? And just to add moments of interest. And you know, generally if you cake them in a bit of fucking echo or reverb, you know, they tend to sound pretty sick. Yeah, so that's basically it. I mean, the track itself is dead simple. I mean, we've got the intro. We can briefly cover this. This won't take too long, but You know, we can see we've got loads of ambience here in the intro. So Foley and wind, mix hat. So that's just a hat so people can mix the track when they're playing. So they've got something there, percussive. You know, loads of weird, just like eerie kind of samples. And then this looks like a big reverb swell going into the chord. So yeah, just a simple chord with basically, it looks like there's got to be somewhere that's doing the kind of, there's like a wobble going on, right? Wobble and there's some automation going on this form scale thing. That actually sounds super nice. I need to remember to use that more. But yeah, just a chord that's basically rising up, you know, filters, lots of automation, letting more frequencies through. Here we go. This is what's doing the wobble. It's duck sidechain to the swing channel, the swing hi-hat up here, so that it wobbles basically matched with the swing of the drums. You can see that, you'll see that the sidechain input is basically swung. So. And then basically, you know, this is a super simple kind of build-up vibe, right? Have all your elements, slowly remove frequencies with the filters, slowly wash it out with echo and reverb. And then vocal sample and boom.
Big shot running on the back part.
So yeah, nothing complicated, guys. We can go over the master. We've got some very slight kind of, we've got a little bit of high end pushed up, you know, I say a little bit, 5.6 dB of 10k and up. That will just add to that'll just give it a bit of brightness. Does sound a bit dull without it, so it sounds alright actually. And then a clipper doing nothing. Well, no, it's not quite doing nothing, sorry. Without the clipper, we are 6.4 dB in the red. So the clipper is on there just doing nothing, and that is just hard clipping the entire signal at 0, which results in us getting a loudness of about -6 LUFS, which I think is loud enough. I think that's fucking loud enough. We don't need to be louder than that. So yeah, nothing crazy, nothing like, you know, mad going on the master, and there never is on my tunes. You know, generally I try to get the mix sounding nice. I like to get the tune sounding nice, just to how I'm listening. You know, I'm not bothered about the meters being in the red or fucking whatever. Like, I'm not bothered. Does it sound good to me? Is it sounding all right? When I put the clipper on, does it sound okay? Yes, fine. You know. And that's the tune. How long's this video now? For about 50 minutes. So I hope this has been okay, guys. Yeah, for anyone that's stuck through, big up. Hopefully we're gonna get this Patreon absolutely popping. With loads of stuff, you know, bass tutorials and all that kind of shit, and streams and whatever. So hopefully this is a good entry point into it. If you've got any other kind of tunes that you want to kind of hear me break down, by all means kind of drop them in the comments. And yeah, big up everyone. Bye.